So this Christmas, I went over to the Goodwill in Salem, and I was looking mostly for some winter clothes to give to the people I'm helping out that I've moved in downstairs, Stephen and Cheyenne. And you know, the Goodwill in Salem has the big bin, so they've got the regular side on the right hand side, and then on the left hand side they have these big blue bins on wheels that you kind of dig through and sort and find things. So it's really like a matter of chance, a luck of the draw. You may find what you're looking for, you may not, but you have to dig for it. Sometimes it can be right on top, but most of the time you've got to look. And it kind of got me reminiscing back to my childhood, back when I was younger. I know I was old enough to walk and old enough to talk. I'm going to say preschool, kindergarten, maybe. And it kind of got me thinking about when I was younger, and we really didn't have a lot growing up. My father was an airman in the Air Force, very young. My mother, I really don't remember what she did at that time. But I remember we didn't have a lot of money. We were poor. We were on welfare. We got, I guess, what would be the equivalent of food stamps today. Back then we stood in a line and we picked up the items we got, which would be a couple of gallons of milk, a huge hunk of cheese. I don't know, that cheese was always so good though. And a couple of big tubs of peanut butter, just a simple white label that said peanut butter. But anyway, I remember we would go to, I guess, what would be the Goodwill back then. I think maybe it was a Salvation Army. It was some sort of thrift store type thing. And looking through the bins at the place in Salem just kind of made me remember back when I was that young. We didn't have a lot, and when we would park, we would always walk through where the truck would back up and donations would be put out, and there were huge piles of new stuff and donations, and as a kid I remember wishing that I would get first dibs. It seemed like what was in the store was just subpar. I was thankful for what I had, whatever we found, and I always found something that that made me happy. But I always would dream of something so simple as, God, I wish I could have first dibs on getting into that pile that no one else has touched, the fresh donations. And it's funny. It's funny because I just turned 45. And maybe I was 5, maybe I was 7. But times really haven't changed much for me. I'm really always looking. I've come to find that I'm okay with secondhand. I'm okay with fixing something that's broken and finding new life for it. For me, I appreciate that. For me, I'd rather have that than something brand new. I've come to find that I'm okay with not having a lot, simplifying things, minimalizing, getting down to the basics. Really, that's what I've come to find that I think satisfies me. My grandmother was a taxidermist. We lived in a small town called Sumter in the state of South Carolina. And outside of the Air Force Base, there wasn't much there. And to date, there's really not much there. But for me, that was home. That's where I have the memories that bring family for me. That's where I remember growing up. That's where I remember being a kid. That's where I remember riding on dirt bikes and fishing with Nana and Papa. And for me, that was my childhood. We we didn't have a lot, but I was okay with that. And here I am at 45. And I have more than I could ever imagine. And I've had more than I can ever imagine. And for me, looking back on those times and looking back on the future and getting back to the basics, and that's moving forward with Fern Hollow, and that's creating this tiny house community of like-minded individuals that I want to get to know, that I want to help grow and prosper. For me, I think the basics have been something I've always enjoyed. I miss fishing. I miss the good times that we had growing up. And, I don't need a lot to get ahead. I don't need fancy things. I don't need flashy things. So, I think for me, 2021 is going to reflect on getting back to my roots, going back to where I feel I belong. And with that is Fern Hollow and the basics. So for me, I'm looking forward to new adventures, new friendships,